So this is the Historic Preservation Commission. Today is March 21st, 2022. And I guess Kim is still here. I forgot. I guess she's still here. If we can do a roll call. Sorry, I didn't know if you were on the phone or
Yeah, I can do it. Chair Haley,
here.
Commissioner Berg,
Here.
and Commissioner Dunlap.
Here.
All right, and we're just waiting for Commissioner Keller, so he might come later. And then do we need to do the virtual meeting protocol? Do we need that?
I'm on
Kim,
mute.
you're muted.
There's no public hearing, so you
Oh,
you
okay.
have to. Yep.
Awesome. Okay, that's easy. So we will approve our agenda for this evening, which is pretty simple, unless anyone has anything to add or change.
I'll move that we approve the agenda.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. And then we had our meeting February 21st of 2022, and we just need to approve those minutes. So if there's any changes or issues, otherwise we can move to approve that one as well.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from last month's meeting in February.
Linda, you'll have to second it since I wasn't present. just now.
Oh, okay. I'll second it then. And then all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thanks, Gary. I forgot about that. And then we have, if there are any items that are not on our agenda for this evening, if there's anyone in the public that would like to add anything. I'll look at our participants. I think we have a lot of participants for not having public hearings. All right, so I don't see anyone raising their hand. All right, so we will have a presentation. Oh, that's probably why. For economic vitality. And this is our facade improvement program. So I'll let staff lead this. Or you're just passing it.
I'll just introduce him real quick. No,
Sure.
thank you, Chair Haley.
Yeah.
So we have Austin Brown, who's just turned his camera off. He's the economic vitality specialist, I believe. Sorry if I got that wrong. And then we also have on the call Megan Pierce, who's the director of economic vitality. So they're here to talk about, as I noted in the email and you saw on the agenda, just their facade improvement program. So they're just going to talk to you about what it is and then how it sort of overlaps with our program in some aspects. So Austin, I'll leave it to you, and you should be able to share your screen. I think I'd share the permissions. There you go.
Yeah, hopefully everyone should be able to see that. Good evening, commissioners. Austin Brown with the City of Louisville's Economic Vitality Department, here to give you a little bit of background on the Louisville Revitalization Commission's Facade Improvement Program, which officially launched on March 1st. The LRC identified a facade improvement program as a high priority project in 2021. The goal of the program is to encourage investment in permanent exterior building face improvements for properties located within the Highway 42 urban renewal area. Because reimbursements come from tax increment finance funds, funds can only be spent on commercial properties located within the URA as shown on the next slide. The URA is generally between the Village Square Shopping Center to the west, Hecla Drive to the north, Louisville Plaza to the east, and Pine Street Plaza to the south. Properties outside of this area are not eligible for program funding. The 2022 LRC budget includes a total of $250,000 to be awarded to eligible projects. These funds are distributed on a tiered basis so that smaller projects are eligible for a higher percentage of reimbursement as shown on this table. Additional funding will likely be available should the city receive requests for more than the budgeted amount. The program requires interested businesses and commercial property owners within the URA to submit an electronic application containing the proposed improvements as well as the estimated cost. Applications for improvements to buildings built prior to 1955 will require a review by the Historic Planning Commission. If the improvements are approved by the HPC, the project can then be advanced to the LRC for approval and proceed through the outline process. If HPC denies the application, the project will not be advanced for LRC consideration. This concludes my presentation. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions, and Economic Vitality Director Megan Pierce is also available for questions.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any questions specifically?
I have one. So thank you for the presentation. I looked over the agenda and wasn't aware of this program, and I think it seems like a really great program to improve the commercial and residential facades in the area that's shown there. If the program began March 1st, have you already begun accepting applications, or when, if not, when do you anticipate beginning to receive those?
Sure. So we did kind of electronically roll out the program starting on March 1st. We did an e-blast to kind of our business audience within the city of Louisville. And as of now, we've gotten 4 applications so far. The first LRC review is anticipated to be April 5th for kind of the first round of applications.
Okay.
I had a couple of clarifications to ask about from the content there. It looked like from the map, it includes both sides of Main Street, south of South Street, down to south of Pine, and then goes on north. And I guess the properties that are relevant to us are the ones that are in the historic district and over 55 years old. So those kinds of properties would also be eligible for landmarking. Is getting a facade replacement funding conflict or additional to landmarking grants? Is there any issue with them doing both?
So they could potentially apply for both. They wouldn't be able to use funding from both pools for the same improvements, if that makes sense. So they would have to be for improvements that were not included as part of that landmark grant.
Okay. But this is always for facades, right? That's the nature of this program.
Correct, yes.
Right. So if there was a repair to it or preservation for a facade, I guess they could use the funding from this program and not the preservation grant, something like that.
Potentially, yeah, they could apply for it if they weren't receiving landmark funding for
Okay.
that.
All right. Yeah, it looks like there's a lot more area than just what is in the Old Town district that's part of the historic preservation. And the other thing is kind of minor, but looking at the flow chart that was in the presentation there, it looked like the HPC subcommittee would get involved if it was only a facade request. But as I understand the program, it's only for facade requests. So there would never be a case where the review would be by the whole Historic Preservation Commission, because it would always go to the subcommittee, because it would always be a facade. You know what I'm talking about, the decision box and that flow chart?
Sure. So there are potentially some improvements that may not necessarily fall under kind of just a general facade.
Oh, okay. I thought
Various
that's what-
things like landscaping, outdoor seating, stuff like that.
Well, that's true. That was in the list, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's what I was questioning.
Okay.
Have any of the applicants, are those landmarkable properties or that fall into that category of being before 1955?
So the 2 that we've reviewed so far were both built prior to 1955. One had changes that did not require HPC subcommittee review. And then the second one actually did receive funding from the HVC. So we're going through the process of determining
really?
what is covered through the HVC funding and then what would be covered through the Facade Improvement Program funding.
Okay. Are you saying that it's an already landmarked property?
I don't want to use those terms incorrectly, so maybe Kim can help me out on that for 809 Main.
Yep, it is. Yep, it's landmarked already. Good question.
Mhm.
Thanks,
Okay.
Kim.
Of course.
And then this program is only for the calendar year of 2022.
So the $250,000 is for calendar year
okay.
22. It's anticipated that it'll be kind of an annual program,
Oh, that's cool.
which is
Okay.
for the new budget each year.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, this is great. All right, any other questions about this? So we would potentially see one of the first applicants in April or May, probably would be by the time it'd get to us, maybe May.
Yeah, so kind of depending on the proposed changes and whether it doesn't require the HPC review.
Okay.
Yeah, it would go to you sometime before the LRC review. Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you for being here tonight and doing this. That helps a lot, just having someone to kind of hash through it with instead of just reading through it. So thank you for.
Absolutely. Thank you for the time and for the questions. And if you have any
Yeah.
additional questions, feel free to let me know. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
All right. And then our next item is items from staff. So we have annual goals, update memos, and landmark ceremony planning.
Yeah, so I have a couple of the, or I should say, I have the goals that were a part of that memo that was included with the packet as a PowerPoint in case we wanted to look at it, if that was a little bit easier just to have it in front of us as we talked about it. But my sort of thinking, and of course we can do it however you all would like as we sort of talk through it, but I was thinking we could just kind of either, it's up to you, we could talk through them one by one and just kind of see what we might be interested in, what ones we might want to select as our goals. And of course we can, you know, change out what was on the list and add new ones and all that sort of things tonight if we wanted. Or we could just sort of, if everybody feels comfortable and they read through it, you know, and they kind of have ones that they liked better than others, we could sort of just start talking about ones we thought, you know, as a group we liked to kind of aim for the year. So it's really up to the group. What I'll do is I'll share my screen just so we see all the goals in front of us.
Sure.
And then you guys can kind of tell me what you prefer. Like I said, I'm happy to go through them sort of one by one in that way and talk about them individually, or just kind of as we see fit, or as there's ones that we like. So let me just hide the presenter view and share my screen so we can kind of all have it in front of us. So these would be the goals that we have. So public outreach projects had a number of sub points on whoops. And of course, I think I'm back. My Zoom just and so we had public outreach projects, and then sorry about that.
That's
It's
totally fine.
a fun new twist on my Zoom that's been happening lately. So that's I'm ready to go back in person, I think. Let me try one more time sharing my screen. So we had, so in the packet, right, and in the memo, I had a number of them. Some of them were from last year, if you remember, that I think would be good to carry over. Just as a quick example, finishing up the coloring book, since that's a carryover, and we have the selected artists working on it. I think that's a good one. But there's certainly other public outreach projects that were sub bullet points that we could talk through or add to, or whatever we'd like. And then these are all the other bullet points you see on the the screen I'm sharing would be just directly pulled from the memo. So all the ones that were sort of underlined and italicized and broken up in the memo are just what you see bullet pointed here. So do folks feel like they want to just kind of talk through them as they're listed on the bullet points in front of you? Or would you guys feel more comfortable just kind of, did any, spark your interest or were particular value or kind of goals that you would like to do? I'm happy to kind of do it either way.
Do either of you have a preference?
I would say just go through the list. They all look relevant.
Great.
Maybe we don't do everything, but.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. So what I'll do is I have on a separate slide all the sub bullet points for the public outreach. So I'll get to those next. I think we can wait for a moment there. But then the other ones we have would be review online information provided on the city's website. And so this, I think, could be two things. Of course, if there's any, I think we could have two kind of goals as a part of this, if it's what we would want to do and what we want to kind of focus on for the year. One of this, from the packet or what the memo had mentioned, was that, this has been a previous goal where it would be to upload and have something on there, upload to the website a list of landmarks which are on there, but then also a list of demos and have those more publicly available. And I think what could be rolled into that or sort of added to that previous goal would be to just see what we have. I've tried as I've come on, and we've updated things to update them on the website, but I wonder if it may, behoove us or be something we'd want to do to really go through together or do a subcommittee and say, what's on the website and what would we like to update? How do we want to utilize the website maybe as almost like more a marketing tool or outreach tool itself, and seeing just clearing up or adding to. So I think that's kind of where that goal could be. For the next bullet point would be develop new or updated advertisement materials, celebrating or explaining the program. This, of course, is probably related to the previous one I mentioned, but in the memo, I wrote it more as this would be those physical flyers. I think there's been previous staff preceding me that did a great job of kind of having a number of different flyers for a number of different projects or avenues folks could take. But over time with our new funding structures and our new resolutions, those have changed and just become outdated just by time. So I think that could be something we could focus on as well and say, especially when we do something like lenses on Louisville, or if we do more public events this year as kind of COVID wanes, those might be useful to have. So we could have that be a goal. And then the complete historic survey project, I think that one is just a matter of time as we've, waited. This would be the Paleo West survey, those 100 surveys that they're doing. So just as an update, refresher for us, they staff did edits, museum staff did edits, and then they're just culling through those edits. So we're kind of waiting on that. So I think that would be a good goal. And then residential grant amounts and grant requirements are those two other bullet points there. And those are preceding year goals or just preceding your work plan items. So if we want to carry those over, we could. If we feel like taking those on this year, we could talk about those, but I pulled those in since they were previously added. And then the Old Town Overlay Zone District. Obviously, we would have looked over, maybe potential code changes or things like that that would come through from that. That project was at the diagnostic period, if you remember, not too long before the fire, they came to you and did their report. And they had planned on going to the consultant group had planned on going to city council right after the new year. And so that project was put on hold, obviously because of the Marshall fire. And so my understanding is it could come back this year later, of course, probably in the fall or late summer, I'd imagine at the earliest. But I know the plan is to hopefully have it come back, but just time will tell and seeing how things shake loose from the fire. So, that one would be a goal, obviously, as an accessory right to the main project, but we would be a part of that as it came through. So I think that's worthwhile to have a goal. And then complete the coloring book project, which I mentioned kind of at the front of my little presentation here. So that one I think is a great carryover, right? We're in the works on that one. And I think that's a really doable goal for the year. And then before we move any forward, just to kind of go through what we have. So these bullet points are all those public outreach sub bullet points. And these were just ideas I had. They're not set in stone in any way. They were thoughts I had for public outreach measures that we could talk about. I think, I won't belabor it and read them one by one, but I would be interested in feedback from the commission to see I think all of these sub bullet points are probably a goal in and of themselves, as opposed to saying, we have a public outreach goal and we want to do 10 things. I think each public outreach measure is probably its own goal that we can all work on together. So that's what I would kind of bring forward. And then I think the other question for us and for the commission and seeing what you guys would like to do for the year is, I wonder if you feel like it's a good idea to kind of pick a number of goal that we would like, say, do we want to do 5 goals and really reach for those? Do we want to have 10 and see how many we can do? I think that's a good discussion for this evening as well. Just seeing, how do we feel like, how much capacity would we have in conjunction with, right? Most months we have cases that come forward. This is the first month in a while where we haven't had a number of cases at a meeting. So, thinking about our time, and if you guys want to do subcommittees and how many goals you'd like to reach for. So I think I'll leave it at that, but certainly we can, however you want to talk about it. I'm the staff liaison, I'm here to serve the commission. So I think I'm here to answer any questions or see what we could do, but it's certainly up to you all what you'd like your goals to be, for sure.
Yeah, this is a great list. I feel like we have kind of not been able to do anything for 2 years. And so
Yeah.
now it's like, oh gosh, what are we going to do first? Like where
Yes.
do we even begin? Yeah, so kind of a little over, and especially with our commission being so small too, it's a little overwhelming of just like, but yeah, do we want to start with public outreach? Just start there. Is that kind of what we're looking at?
That's what we have up, but it would
Yeah.
help. I can
No,
bring
that's
it back to the
good.
previous
No,
slide.
this
if you'd like as
is
well.
good. This is good.
And certainly just the last thing before I stop talking, but that could be one of our goals too, and it's a public outreach measure. It would take public outreach time, is our goal could be to get the commission as full as we can, right? Or to add 2 new commissioners, or to focus on advertising to get them. So that could certainly be one of our goals too. And I think it would feed into other goals, right? Making flyers or advertising in general, or marketing the program and the commission. So just another thought as well that I don't have on
Right.
here.
Yeah.
Actually, the coloring book project really would be a public outreach project. So, maybe it falls in this general list too. And with Andrea not being on the commission too, I don't know, but maybe we need a reboot about looking at the matters of how that is progressing and what happens next. Because I haven't really talked to the artist, but I'm not on the subcommittee either.
And I think
To see.
I think Chrissy, aren't you on the subcommittee for that?
I am, and we last met with the artist. Gary, the last time we spoke with the artist, you were there.
Oh yeah, the walking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Gary happened
examples.
to be there meeting with Kim, so joined our walk around with the artist.
Yeah.
So she can take some pictures of the properties.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure where she is now, Kim, but I think that would certainly be a goal of moving that project forward to completion. And then, as you said, a lot of these work together, are connected, and also working with the museum. The museum does a lot of great walking tours, so I think it only makes sense to work with the museum to do a walking tour, right, of the coloring book houses, perhaps, and properties, businesses and properties, would be something that could work. So, and then I know that there was a booth at Street Fair. I think it was more the farmer's market, maybe not street fair, because street fair is the Friday night event, and that probably wouldn't be good for a booth. But I think it was the farmer's market, and that would be, I think, a good thing to maybe bring back. So, right, I think with all of the things on the previous slide, I think are all really important endeavors, but realistically would be a lot to bite off all at once, especially with a group this size. So I think we probably want to prioritize, which ones to start with first and which ones to really try to move through, and then maybe secondary ones to get to after that.
And I think I agree with the coloring book. I don't know what the timeline will be on that, as far as because summer is obviously kind of the most natural outreach, just because we can be outside and people are out and about doing things. And that's where the coloring book would pair really well with, like, whether we're doing partnerships with the museum or walking tours or farmers markets or whatever, like having the coloring book would be
Right.
a good partnership for anything we do,
Mhm.
really. So I don't know, but I don't know what the timeline is as far as because that would basically be figuring out the publishing piece by March, or having it finished kind of by May, you know.
Yeah.
So
Kim,
that,
Kim, I'll probably shoot you an email tomorrow and maybe you and I can discuss just where the coloring book is so we can so I can be brought back up to speed and then we can bring everybody here back up to speed.
Absolutely. Yeah, that sounds
and
great.
and I think too with the coloring book, you know, we've kind of obviously had a lot of discussion about the all the different ways we could publish it and things we could do. And one thing we could talk to the artist about also is, you know, could she release some of the prints to us like not as a full finished product, but could we have like 3 homes that she's finished for the summer where we could at least have like handouts of, you know, a coloring page or something just to kind of get us started and have just have something versus having to wait for the whole thing to be finished, you know. So I don't know if that might be something we could kind of discuss. Obviously, you know, a lot of it depends on her workload and what that looks like. I don't want to oversimplify her process by any means, but that could be something just as a way that we could get it, just be able to actually use it this year. So anyway, that's one thing. And it might be easier to publish it, like having just a few pages or something like that instead of, you know, the whole book or whatever. So that might be one thing to kind of explore.
I like that idea because I think that'd be nice to kind of pique people's interest.
Yeah,
People who would gravitate toward that would certainly, want to know that there's more coming. It'd be nice to
right.
have those right available
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
places like the library and farmers markets for kids and adults to access this summer.
Right. Yeah. And even this is another thing we'll talk closer to publishing, but like having like kid prints and then adult prints, like
Oh.
with different quality paper, you know, as far as not spending a whole bunch on nice paper for kids when they're just going to color it and they might hang it in the room, they might not. But for adults, like they would actually, you know, want to maybe color it very well and frame it and all that kind of stuff. So that's another kind of more of a budgeting and like how to kind of thing later on. But that, you know, having a single print allows us to have that flexibility too and use it in different capacities. So but yeah, and farmers markets are great outreach. They are a lot of a commitment. But they're fun. They're a great way to interact with people and all that. I kind of wonder this year with our manpower, if just partnering with some of the, like piggybacking with some of the museum things might be a better and more natural use of our time. I don't know. That's my only concern is just yeah, that's the only thing. I know when we did farmers markets in the past, we were in the process of the ballot
Funding.
tax renewal and all that. So it was a little more of like we kind of had like a reason to be there and people were wanting to talk about it, that kind of thing. So I guess just for the effort, I don't know we obviously want people to know about our program for sure. So I'm just trying to figure out if we're like, yes, we want to commit to at least like 2 farmers markets for the summer. I think that would be totally doable. Probably not like I think we only did probably like 3, like maybe once a month, maybe 2 a month when we were doing it. So that's the only concern I have is just like our end goal ratio to like effort. You know what I mean? So anyway, that was my only thought about that. And so maybe just doing things in the museum or doing things they won't have as much traffic and they won't have the variety of people. Anyway, I don't know. So those are just some of my off the top of my head thoughts about farmers market. Does anyone feel differently? Like, do you guys feel like farmers markets would be beneficial? I think at this point, like I'm trying to figure out like how do we reach people that are in Old Town that we want to reach to get into our program, like because farmers market pulls so many. And we were talking about the tax initiative. It affected the whole town and even people that weren't in our living in Louisville because they all paid the tax, they all supported it and they all use our downtown and all those kind of things. So it was a little more of a broad net, but I feel like we kind of at this point have a little more of a specific audience that we're trying to reach. And so trying to figure out like how do we reach that group, So
A lot of these different ideas kind of chain together. Like getting the coloring book done would be ideal to have it be able to be distributed at a few farmers market events, and that could then be used as Kim suggested for a walking tour based on the coloring book at some time, maybe in the fall after the farmers markets were over. But part of it just depends on how soon that coloring book could be ready, and your idea of doing some plates or specific prints out of that might be a worthwhile interim step. But I would think to do a few farmers markets would be good. Maybe even a street fair, but it can be kind of noisy. But
right.
maybe not down what is it, Walnut or whatever street that is over there. Maybe not so noisy there.
Yeah.
Could be worthwhile though.
I do. I'm thinking about what you shared, Linda. Though, I think it's always good to keep in mind, our it's hard to say like our target audience, which is those living downtown primarily, who will choose to participate in this program if possible. I think it's good also to let people know this exists who don't live downtown because some people truly just don't even know about our
Right.
program.
Absolutely.
We want them to continue to support it and appreciate it. But ultimately our first kind of tier is people who could directly participate in the program. When you did the farmers markets, was it always 2 volunteers at the table? Yeah, so it is pretty heavy impact on our time and resources. So if we do them, which I think we could think about how many to do. So
right. And we also I don't know when they start assigning the booths, but we do have to
let them know.
We have to pay for a booth. We have to get all the materials and all that kind of stuff. And it's prep and that kind of thing, and like I said, it was great. Like I worked many of them and it was a very, very positive experience. But again, just our focus was just kind of different at that time. So, yeah, but at the same time, I don't know that our target audience is at the museum either. They're not at the museum events. That's a much smaller, and I know there's been some First Fridays are
Art walk.
Are quieter but busier than just museum nights. I know we did that a couple times, and it gets a little more traffic than just some of the museum nights, but it's not as loud when it's not on a street fair night, but it's also not as loud just because it's out on Main a little more. That's another option, but again, and I guess maybe more downtown people, I don't know. I guess I've just been thinking too, I know Kim and I were talking about some more of the like educational, almost like seminars that would interest people in the old town that are homeowners that maybe aren't even really considering landmarking or aren't really thinking about it, but would just kind of entice them. But things like how to restore historic windows without having to replace them, and like getting there's companies that do that just refurbish old original windows, and how it's actually more sustainable because it's less waste, and they like the double pane windows were very efficient when they were first installed and all those kind of things. So kind of finding some topics that interest homeowners of older homes in general, and then that would pull directly our targeted audience, and would just, and then as they explore things, being able to say, we have a program that would actually help pay for those windows restorations, or whatever it is, whether it's siding or, how to deal with asbestos or whatever, like just those kind of things, and having it more of like a library seminar or something. And so that's not as fun and like interactive, but it's like applicable, and it's things that people wonder about, I feel like a lot. But that was kind of another outreach. I don't think it's anyway, that was another, again, just trying to figure out that targeted, or even like we had movie night at historic place, but even if we did like Memory Square, like some little event there where it's right in the middle of our old town targeted area, and is kind of geared a little more towards the neighborhood instead of just the whole community. Again, not that the whole community wouldn't be excluded from it, but it would have a high chance of pulling homeowners of old town. So anyway, I think the reason I keep going that direction is we had the tax passed, and then we kind of revamped our grant amounts and the process and everything. And then everything kind of shut down, where we didn't really get a chance with some of the staff changes and all the things. I just feel like we haven't had that really nice, almost like a grand reopening or something for our program. And so I think that's kind of where I'm heading a little more, is like, how do we, again, still try to let people know like our program has changed, and we're back in business, things are back to normal a little bit. So we want to make sure that you're aware. We want to come out and meet you and answer questions and that kind of thing. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm going. And again, like walking tour, I think people have been missing the walking tours for years. Like we haven't, I think the museum kind of waned on walking tours for a while, just for different reasons. And I think people are definitely hungry for that. But again, I don't know that it gets our targeted audience either as much. So I guess I'm just kind of going for like, what's the most bang for our buck as far as letting the people in Old Town know what our program is, and being proactive in it, versus just kind of what we've kind of been forced to do in some way in the last 2 years, of just kind of being passive and just as things kind of come to us, So Old Town's just changing a lot, and I just want to make sure that we really give a good effort of putting our program out there and giving it a good representation, and having that just a good interaction with our commission and the homeowners, that kind of thing. So silence.
Would it be okay if I say?
Or we can do street fair or
Yeah.
farmers market. That's fine.
one thing I'm hearing, one of our goals could just be, I wrote down like evaluate and target events that we could partner with the museum, and our goal could be to just try over the year to talk about and find 2 maybe we could aim for. Maybe that's good for the group our
The
size,
museum.
and say
Mhm.
we could do maybe one in the summer and one in the fall or whatever. But maybe our goal could just be to aim for 2 programs, and then that way we don't have to decide tonight if we don't want to, and we can kind of see what flushes out with the coloring the book, or what flushes out with COVID,
Sure.
who knows what's going on, right? And just
Mhm.
kind of take that, if that sounds good to the group. I mean, obviously these are our goals, but I think that might be nice to aim for. And then we know that our goal to shoot for is, okay, we said 2, and then we can aim for 2. So that could be a way we could do it too, if that's what the group wanted.
And so 2 would be with the museum.
If we wanted, right,
Yeah.
and then 1, I think maybe a slam dunk could be the walking tour, right? I think based on the coloring book or whatever it might be,
Mhm.
but then it could be something else. I mean, and Lenses on Louisville is coming up, so that's something where we could be there again. They've invited us again as well, so we could certainly do that too. So that's another option.
Okay.
It may be jumping between foils or parts of the proposed items to do for this year, but Kim's bringing up the online information and keeping track of that, I think is a good thing, to get the walking maps up to date, because they haven't been for quite a while. And to know, I think honestly, the neighborhood and the public deserves to know which sites have been landmarked, which are considering it. And that might also give us a way to follow up on homeowners who've taken the first step, the probable cause, but then it hasn't progressed. I'd be kind of interested in Keith's experiences with having gone through all of that to getting to the landmark stage, and see if there are snags along the way that we can deal with. Because as you know, there have been way more probable cause petitions than there have been properties that actually get to the landmark stage, and maybe we can help with that. And as properties get landmarked, I think it encourages their neighbors to really think about that,
Mhm.
such as the plaque ceremonies. So a lot of these things tie together quite a bit.
Mhm.
Or see if more incentives are needed, which is also on another foil there. See how that really works.
So I would say let's commit, or let's have a goal of 2, partnering with 2 museum events, being present there. I think
And
Gary,
so
what,
one of those for sure being, I think, Lenses on Louisville, because that was a good fit.
right.
Mhm.
And right, so pairing with the museum is sort of a natural fit.
Yeah.
For at least one more thing and things like that. Being new to HPC, and right, like with all being Zoom and that, you're right, it has been sort of more of a passive thing. So I would be interested in hearing more of these sort of active things that HPC has done in the past.
Mhm.
And think of a way to kind of reach our target audience a bit more and do something, a little different that could kind of get their attention. So I'd
Mhm.
be interested in kind of like bringing that back, or putting some thought into that, or I don't know, maybe a subcommittee or something like that to kind of see what else we can do in that area.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So 2 museum events, possibly figuring out what a targeted audience event would look like would be a 3rd thing. And Gary, I think what you were talking about with the list of things, I think that would be the website that would go on the one of the previous bullet points. Isn't that right, Kim? Like we had a whole section on the website.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
because that
it-
would be,
sorry. I was just gonna say, in previous years, or I think even last year for sure, at least, it was it was very specific from when I came on, and it was, you had all talked about adding to the website a list, kind of an ever populating living list of demolitions and then
Yeah.
landmarks.
Mhm.
Landmarks should be on there. I think that's one of our CLG things, but demolitions, a list, a current list is not. So that could be something put together.
Right. So, so just to stick, we'll come back to that one, Gary, when we get to the website. I can't remember what that one's actually called. But for the actual outreach to museum, what one potential targeted audience, and then was there anything else on there? There was the walking tour. Can you go back to that one again, that slide?
Will we continue the plaque ceremonies similar, like the
Mhm.
in-person ones, like because those were, I think like we could advertise these things a little better.
Mhm.
I know I spoke with somebody this committee, but maybe in some smaller group of this committee at some point. We don't really have much of a social media presence, so I think
Mhm.
a lot of the things that we're doing, people don't know. And again, those would reach the wider community, of course, as well. But um, I think we could do like see those plaque ceremonies advertised, and there's things where the
Totally.
HBC is in person advertised a bit more.
Right. No, I agree with that too. Because that's been another, with our staff changing, that's been another huge question of like, how do we do social media? Like, do we have someone on staff that handles all the social media that we could just send things to and they could post it for us? Or does HPC have their own something that, so we've had those questions for a while and still don't really know. But yeah, I think that's would be an awesome natural way to publicize things. So yeah,
It'd be good to maybe clarify who is
yeah,
responsible for posting updates like that for this board and
right,
others. For the museum, for example, some that do want to publicize things like that. So for example, when the coloring book is ready, we can put
mm,
it places, the library, farmers markets,
Mhm.
things like that. But that's the perfect example of something you'd want to put out on social media for people to know
right,
about.
no,
So
fully,
Mhm.
that would be a good goal to add another goal to our list.
yeah, I know,
Not really taking any off here yet.
I know,
But good goal of trying to figure out what's going on with social media and work there.
yeah,
Well, having the coloring book available at the library would be a natural. In
mm,
fact, it'd be odd to not have it available there.
mm. I don't know.
The
I think we'll have to be careful with just endless. I feel like we don't want it just to have like to be out there where people just pick it up all the time. I feel like it's
uh,
something that we want that personal encounter. Otherwise, it's not. You know what I mean? That's my personal opinion. That doesn't mean that's true. I just feel like if it's part of it's an outreach tool for sure.
Mhm.
And so making sure that when it's available to people, they come in contact with one of us to kind of
Mhm.
be the face of the program, I think makes a big difference.
Yeah, well, that's ideal.
Yeah, so it's not that we don't want people to have access to it by any means, but I think because we are paying for it too, making sure that we're using our resources and funds as efficiently and effectively as possible.
Mhm.
So yeah. So anyway, that's a whole side note, but
Right.
yeah, I think, and that's where the manpower comes in too, of making sure that when we are at events and passing it out and answering questions, all that kind of stuff. So
Right. Lots going on in the background still.
I know. All right. So
I want to say one more thing. So I think
yeah.
connected to kind of all of this, Kim, if you can go back to the slide that listed all of the different goals,
Mhm.
it probably, in my opinion, would be important to the second and third there, review the online information, but definitely develop the new and updated
Right.
materials because all these things we're saying, we want them to have contact with one of us. They want to have,
Right.
and we want to promote this program, like it's not benefiting us if this information is not updated. So the coloring
Absolutely.
book is in the hands of the illustrator right now.
Right.
So we will keep circling back to that, but this is something that we can do now.
Right.
So that when we are public facing at a farmer's market or museum event or whatever, we've got updated materials.
Right. And I agree with that 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Like we need to be able to physically talk to them and then also put things in their hands to take home and digest. Yeah, for sure.
So who would do those? I mean, would that be extremely time consuming? Because we have all this information and, you know, again, being new here, I'm assuming that I've probably seen all of the most new things, updated things regarding the grants and the finances available, and all of that. So it's simply a matter of sort of using existing templates for the most part and putting in the updated information.
Well, and that was one of the things, we had flyers and pamphlets, but the program was so wonky as far as like the different steps and the different grant amounts and all that kind of stuff, that's why we really wanted to revamp. So I think as far as plugging things into the previous, I don't even know if we have access to the previous like digital. Because I don't know if Lauren Trice created those graphics or if we had if there was an in-house graphic designer. I'm not really sure. There were different things happened at different times. So I don't know if we have digital things to even be able to plug things back in again. So that would probably be a staff question.
Right.
But that's one of the things is it was really hard. I think it'll be easier. Bottom line is I think our program is easier to put into a package now because it's just more straightforward than it was. Because that was our hang up before, is we were like, it's almost like a choose your adventure. Like if you want to do this option, turn to page 4. So it's not that complicated anymore. Anyway, that might be a question for Kim as far as who does it and how, and can we use anything from the previous?
Yeah, I think that's so, from what I can understand, I think Felicity definitely made a number of materials. I think a lot of our info sheets. And then from what I can tell, I think it was Lauren Trice that made a lot of the flyers. So the kind of design, they were done in Publisher. So from what it looks like, I think they were done in-house. And staff still has access to Publisher. So, certainly I would be more than happy to do that kind of the work, to put everything together, to get the information. And then I think it would be, if that sounds good to the commission, I think it would be just up to you all to say, how involved you'd like to be. For instance, would you like me to bring a couple drafts and you guys say, we like draft A as opposed to draft B, or would you like, kind of those sorts of things, which if you gave me direction, I could certainly do the work and do the heavy lifting. So it's one less thing for the commission to really take the brunt of, but then I would want to ultimately have it be what the commission wants. So I could bring it forward and say, does this look good? And you guys could say, let's go back to the drawing board or whatever else. I mean, that's how I could do it. And I think it would be staff's, because I'm here, it's my job. I'm certainly more than happy to put those materials together.
Yeah, that might be a good first step. I think too, I don't know, as far as the design, like that was, it kind of if I remember correctly, the things that Lauren did kind of matched the master plan kind of style and everything.
Yep.
So that would probably be another commission question, is do we want to keep that same style or do we want something kind of different? But the basic information would be a good start, probably just bringing it as is with the new information. And we can decide on that. Yes, that looks good. Change this, add this. And then maybe we can go into the actual style of what it looks like or whatever. Would that be?
I always thought that the materials we had down at City Hall were pretty good, but I haven't reviewed them for a while, I guess. So maybe the first step would be for Kim to get together all of the things that have been published and are, currently available, and then have us review them and decide if there are some that should be updated, some kept, or some discarded, something like that. See what we want for the style of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not even sure what's circulating anymore. If we have things circulating, I don't know.
Well, there are some shelves or drawers down at the planning department that describe the plan. And
Okay.
that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that might be a good first step too, of just seeing what's actually out there. And that would be something too, even in between meetings, just sending it digitally
Mhm.
where everyone can kind of look at it or.
Right, it might be just more efficient to, right, if Kim, if you could send it out between meetings and we could do some comments and
Mhm.
not to slow down the process, but you know,
Right.
I think in a well, it won't be Zoom, it will be in person, but yeah, it's one of those things that might be good to have some time to look at and look at it again and think about and give some comments to,
Mhm.
like not during a meeting with a packed agenda.
It might be back on the outreach stuff, but the second bullet there was about the walking map or the map for landmark properties in conjunction with the effort to update the information to know what landmarks had happened and what scrapes had happened and that information. It would probably be fairly easy to update our landmark map uh, with not only the locations and the pictures, but little vignettes. And then to change the process to keep that map updated, because it probably hasn't been updated in 5 years or something like that.
Mhm.
And it would, if the process is made to, whenever something happens as a landmark, it wouldn't be that difficult to update that map, I think.
Do we have access to that? Because we do, as far as changing it and everything. Okay. That's good.
Well, not individually, we don't.
No,
I
not
think,
us. I mean,
the
HPC
city.
staff, yeah, is what I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah,
Yep, we do. And I had started updating some of them. I think I got through 3 and then it just time, got away from me. So
Right.
if it could be definitely more of a specific goal, and I think something we can really focus on.
Mhm.
Because I think we have about 56 plaques, right? So landmarked buildings. And I believe what's on that GIS walking map is like 35. So it definitely is not only like updating in terms of kind of what's written, but updating to make it up to date with what's landmarked would be both.
Right.
I can help you on that if you need to, Kim.
Certainly.
Because we have had a few efforts to
Mhm.
try to put together a Google document that had the landmark properties on it, but it didn't really get completed.
Do you still have access to it though, Gary?
Yes. Yeah, Andrea had actually created the
Right.
some Google documents, and we could still get to those
Okay.
as a source, if that helps.
Yeah. Okay. And I know with the landmark map too, I think I want to say we all helped kind of write the little blurbs, like because they were pretty small synopsis of the social history. But that was something that we all helped with, was just kind of, I think she told us like how many sentences or however long it needed to be or whatever. But that's something that we can do too. If there's 15 of them, just kind of divvy them up and
I think oh, sorry.
well, no, just divvy them up, write our blurb, bring them to one of our meetings and just everyone kind of look at it and make sure that that's appropriate and good and whatever. And then that just takes the pressure off Kim to have to,
Well,
do more writing piece or whatever.
Yeah, those have pretty much all been done too. First Caleb and then I had been passing on little blurbs to the monthly Downtown Business Association
Mhm.
newsletter
Yep.
that were historic preservation and. to
And you've
call
done it for
Kim-
all of them?
All of them,
All
yeah.
56,
In
okay,
fact, we have had more months than we have landmarks, so kind
right,
of circling back around to ones that have been done. So
Okay.
I have a list of all those,
Okay, so that might
although
be,
my computer's in the shop, but I'll soon have it again.
yeah, well, and that'd be great too, and, I can't remember, I, I don't know what the difference in detail between the downtown, what's it called?
Yeah,
The-
the Downtown Business Association.
Right. I don't know what the difference in detail is between them. I want to say the landmarking tour had a little more detail than the email did, but we
Yeah.
can look at it. It's at least a good start for sure. So
Yeah,
that's
right.
yeah,
And it's all way carved down from what the
right.
museum has put together on those properties.
Exactly. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great idea. Okay. So updating the GIS map, landmark map. 2 events. One of the targeted, and then figuring out our materials, our brochures and that kind of thing is a big one. And then also the website, I feel like kind of goes in with that as far as the demos and landmarking list. And this is another thing I feel like keeps getting kind of pushed around, but I know too, there was talk about like we were getting a new website and that our whole thing was going to be like redone. But I think that was like 2 or 3 years ago where they were like, Louisville's getting a whole new city website and our like HPC, all the boards and commissions will have a new, so there was kind of some whole, like because our website is not great. And that's been one of our kind of questions, like, should we do that? And they're like, hold on, we just hired someone to do that. But I don't think it's ever, I don't know what the status on our websites. Obviously, we can't change our website ourselves, and Rob has something to say. So,
Sure. So the city did complete that project to update.
okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So the city did complete the project to update the website generally, and so
Okay.
the Historic Preservation Commission website was updated. It could certainly, be enhanced. So that could be a project, but there is a specific, vendor of the website or type of website that we're stuck with that has some, limitations on design. But
Right.
other than that, we have what we have. One of the things you can do that, bring in different tiles and make it a little more user friendly. And then once you get all these brochures that you've been talking about updated, having links to those would be helpful as well. But when Felicity was here, she did do a lot of work to, I guess I'd say, consolidate within that new website format. So it's a good project for somebody to review and figure out how we can make that better.
Okay. Thanks. That's helpful.
I thought that one issue when I first joined the commission and started looking at the web material was that there was information listed with the Historic Preservation Commission and the historic plan, but it's largely separate from what's in the planning department under historic preservation. So it's not clear to someone who says, oh, I hear you're on the HPC, let me go see what is there, because actually the bulk of the information is elsewhere. At least that was my take on it. When you're familiar with it, well, then of course it's no problem.
Right. So I think main thing is we probably just need to make sure that's a priority too, because that's a huge outreach.
Mhm.
That's a lot of people's first point of contact to some extent. So
Yeah.
Okay. I guess maybe we should go back to that previous slide again, the more overview. So we have our public outreach,
Mhm.
review online information. So that's the website, materials, and the survey will just happen.
Mhm.
And then I don't see the landmarking ceremony listed on the outreach either, but obviously that's something that we want to do. So that's kind of a standing, we're not gonna recreate it or anything. And then the residential grant amounts, was that to review the grant amounts? What was that for?
Yeah, that was a carryover as well as grant requirements from when I came on last year. So for the grant amounts, yeah, it was to evaluate to see if it was meeting the needs, if you wanted to
Right.
change them. Yep.
Yeah. Do we still feel like we want to evaluate that at this point, or do we want to wait on that?
I think with all the other things we just sort of expressed interest in moving forward with, maybe that one becomes sort of secondary at this point, and then we could reevaluate again in 4 months, 6 months, and see where we are. And if we've kind of moved through some of these other ones, then maybe take that on before the end of the calendar year.
Yeah, I think I agree with that as well.
Yeah.
And then grant requirements.
I think Kim had listed something in the more detailed description about
Right.
Looking at the special circumstances or
Mm,
extraordinary circumstances.
That's correct.
right.
Yeah, that's worth considering at some point, but maybe it's not quite as imminent.
Yeah, I would, I mean, I think it's definitely worth a discussion, but maybe not on the front end of this year, maybe, like maybe again, look at it in the second half of the year, maybe, and just kind of see. Summer will probably be one of our busiest seasons, I would imagine, of the year. I mean, I guess hopefully we won't wish that we'd had the discussion sooner. But yeah, I'm just reading through it still. Yeah, I don't know. It's a very important discussion. It's just so case by case, so it's just hard to even know where to start the discussion and like how. So I feel like we could have the discussion prior to kind of quote unquote busy season. But just trying to clarify specific standards for qualification, or it's just hard, it's hard to even know where to start with those. So if anyone has any suggestions, I'd be open for that, but it just kind of seems, it's just such a hard I don't know, case by case. What were you gonna say, Gary?
If we are able to put together the information about what got landmarked, what got scraped, and also have another category of what got started in the process, the applications for probable cause, but didn't go anywhere, then maybe we have the ability to follow through on those without being too inquisitive to see what we could have done better or still could do to move those people forward. So, that might be something to consider at the same time. I know people who've inquired about getting going with landmarking, but didn't really pursue it. And it'd be good to know why.
Right. And so that would be grant requirements as far as,
Maybe not. That's more legal or procedural.
oh,
I just
okay,
thought that just knowing if we could help
right,
with that process, because it's if you're doing national historic preservation, why then the assessment and all is a big deal. A lot of
right,
people involved, but for homeowners to in the old town to do that themselves, maybe that's not so simple.
right. No, I think that's just a follow-up and evaluation of our program is a good idea. I was just trying to figure out if, as far as grant requirements on our list, like if that's something that is something that we need to look at on the like front side of this year, or if that's something we want to wait for the back side of the year. So that's what I was with the grant requirements we were kind of saying as far as things that are extraordinary circumstances or
Mhm.
all those kind of things. And that's something that comes up. Obviously, we have homes that have, need greater amounts of funds. And so there has been a discussion of, do we need to set boundaries or limits or require certain things? Like what is extraordinary? All those kind of questions have come up. So that's the discussion we need to have. And I was just saying that often it's so case by case. So like having a discussion is just hard because it's all these hypothetical
Sure.
Cases. So it's hard, and then even with those, it's hard to set clear boundaries because it's just such a hard. So that was my question: is grant requirement something I kind of feel like it's kind of circular discussion where we just kind of go round and round a lot of times. So, but obviously it does come up a lot. So we just need to decide as a commission, is that something we want to go ahead and like talk about formally and try to figure out some kind of guidelines on the front end of this year, or do we want to table that as a to-do list for maybe the second part of the year? Or
Mhm.
so that was kind of my question to everyone, is what's our priority on that? Because we said residential grants, we're just going to kind of table it for now, maybe look at that for 3 to 4 months or 4 to 6 months, I think. So grant requirements are is the next bullet item, just to figure out.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's a tricky one. There's good arguments to be made for looking at it sooner and for and for waiting on it. So
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know. I can always learn more about the grants and grant requirements. So maybe it's one of those things we just kind of need to do and kind of get to. But I'll also defer to you both, having more experience with this. So
We could definitely benefit from having a discussion offline, about it ourselves, so that we can at least be consistent in handling those things. And we've tried to do that, but we may have treated different homeowners differently depending on the night and the presentation.
would it be something, as sort of Gary says, that would it be best to perhaps set up a meeting of HPC members who can attend, outside of our regular meetings to do that? Because it just seems like it's more of a discussion than, again, an agenda item.
Right, and that's what I was gonna ask too, is if we wanted to have a special meeting for it, we still have to publicly note it and everything, but that way we wouldn't, because our meetings, like this is a very low item meeting, which is very rare. So I don't know if that's gonna be happening in the near future. So that might be something, if we feel like it's something we should just go ahead and have a discussion, just have a meeting in between meetings.
Well,
And then the second question too is for staff, what's her capacity? Like she's still very much in the throes of, I'm assuming, of fire and all that. So I also want to be sensitive to staff time as far as having a separate meeting. So anyway, Kim can speak on that.
I'd be happy to do it. I think having a separate meeting is probably better in some ways. So, as we work out a date that works for the commission, but then also, staff, but that would be the only thing that's prepared for and researched for and a memo written about and that sort of thing. So in terms of capacity, I think as long as we hit on it, we know when we want to do it, we ahead of time, and we do obviously would have to for public notice. I think it should be fine, and I'd be happy to do that. Certainly, summer is harder, but if that is what's best for the commission, that's what I'm here for. I'm certainly happy to do that.
Okay. So do we want to look at like maybe the next 2 months, like seeing a time that would work for staff as far as doing a meeting in between meetings for this?
I would think so. And yeah, I think I would sort of, I guess at this point, argue for just moving forward with this and the
Okay.
next 2 to 3 months. So April, May, June, something like that. Knowing that summer
Will be the
people's
busiest.
other schedules get a little busy, but
Totally.
so yeah,
Okay.
April, May, early June, perhaps.
Okay. And then probably an evening meeting for everyone. And so maybe if there's dates that work for you, Kim, just throw some out for us and we can try to land on one.
I can do that. I'll put out an email and like a little doodle poll, and then we can see
Yeah.
what works best for the group.
That's perfect.
Okay, great.
And I can do day meetings too, so I'd be open to those as well. Not sure what the rest of the commission can do, but
Yeah, I'm hit or miss. So yeah. Okay.
mhm.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a pretty good discussion in itself.
Would it be,
All right.
would it be okay if I ran through kind of what I've heard as being the main goals, and
Mhm.
then I'll write them all after and send them, but I can run through if that sounds good to everyone. So
Great.
for the kind of main ones, and there's some subparts, but so what I've heard for goals, first of all, 1 and 2, I think for sure would be completing the historic survey would be one. It's just the consultant, and then they'll come to finish it. But then also the coloring book. So finishing the coloring book was a main goal, and what that came with in terms of promotion materials and getting the word out and finish publishing and that sort of thing. So the coloring book would be the second goal. The third one I heard that kind of covered what we talked about. So evaluate and target 2 events to work with the museum. One would be Lenses on Louisville, and then another targeted event with a more preservation lean. Then the next goal that's separate from that would be find ways to promote ourselves on social media, and evaluate ways we could do that. And then the fourth one, this has a number of sub points, but all kind of together. So is update promotional and informational materials. So that would include the website in general, the flyers, the GIS map, and then even the landmark and demo list. Those sorts of things would fall under it. And then the last one would be what we just talked about. So reviewing sort of the grant extraordinary circumstances and that sort of thread of grant requirements or grant amounts. And that would be of a special meeting, which we'll do in the next couple months, which I can put out. And I can see, staff can put something together of when we can try to research when we've done extraordinary circumstances grants as a backup and context, and then write, more specifically what is said in our resolution. So we have that for that. So that'll be a separate meeting or special meeting is the goal. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. Coloring book, maybe.
Got that.
Coloring book, yep, we got that.
That's all. Okay. Yeah. I feel like that's just everyone knows that's always there, but
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
That's great. Sounds good.
Okay, great. Well, good. I'll write all that up, and then then we have it together and we can review it.
Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Ken.
Yeah. Do you mind if I keep going, Chair? I can
Go for it,
finish it up.
Yep.
So I think the next item on the agenda then would be just a quick subcommittee update. And then the next item following this would be a little bit more about the plaque ceremony. So we can talk about what that looks like. And so for subcommittee updates, we didn't have any alteration certificate subcommittee reviews since we last met, but we did have one demolition review for 301 Pine. So that's the photo on the right-hand side you can see. So that's the addition. It was a proposed addition. It would have removed what you see there, which is about 48 square feet. And then they were going to add an addition that's about 96 square feet total. So this went to a demolition review since you can see it from the street. This house itself is on the corner of Spruce and McKinley. And so
Right.
you could, so because of that, right, you could see the rear addition. So it went to our subcommittee review and stayed there, and they did release the permit, or they did release the permit, yes, because it didn't affect the overall integrity of the structure. And the subcommittee felt that if this property owner wanted to move forward with landmarking, that the addition would not affect its ability to be landmarked. So just as a kind of clarification there. So that's all the subcommittee reviews we had. And then the next item, I don't have any slides or anything for, but would just be to talk through our plaque ceremony and what that looked like. So a couple things we have, we had a lot last year, but for this year we'll have, I believe we'll have 3 plaques to give out. So less, since we're not as sort of, doing the backlog. And so they're on order. I did put them on order, so we should get them by no later than the last week in May, probably sooner, but I made sure that happened. So I think the 2 main questions I have is when would we want to do it? And we can send out like a doodle poll as well, but just generally speaking, when we'd want to do it. And the second thing I have that I'd like to talk with the commission about is to see if you wanted to do it a different way. And so just as a preface, not to say that this is the way we do it, but I did ask the museum, and they would be happy to host us in their courtyard if we wanted to do it in just one singular spot. So, typically we go house to house, and so that's what we did in those sets last year. But and that's how it's been done, and that's really fun. But I just figured if we wanted to do it a different way, that could be one way to do it. It's still outside. They could have seating. We could collectively, have people gather there. So I wanted to see what the commission thought about that idea, or if you really liked the house to house. And that was just to pose that question and see what we wanted to do this year, if anything different.
Okay. And is May Preservation Month? It's May, isn't it?
May is
Right.
Preservation Month. So Lenses on Louisville would be one program we could do for Preservation Month, which is why we'll be there. But
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's when we typically did all of the plaques, was every May. We would just save them for Preservation Month.
That's correct.
Yeah. So and April is always kind of iffy as far as weather. May is too, but at least it's rain versus snow. So I would say maybe shoot for May, even end of May, but I like the idea of doing it for Preservation Month and doing it throughout the year too. I think it's awesome. But I think having one in May it just gives us one more kind of Preservation Month celebration event. But that's just my personal preference. I think the location's tricky. I don't know. I think the benefit of the museum is that so often the only people at each house are the owners and maybe like little neighbors, but like they don't see the other home, like the neighbor, like the homeowner doesn't go to the next house to see who else got landmarked. So having it at one place would kind of have some, like it would be a larger audience and everyone can kind of see the other houses. But there's something to be said about being at the actual house versus just at a other. So I don't know. I'm pretty torn on that.
One of the nice things about being at the actual house is that neighbors who might just be walking by or heading outside with their dogs or parking or whatnot do have the opportunity to see what's happening and stop and see that. And once again, these are all historic neighborhoods, and I think it's sort of like unofficial impromptu public outreach, which is kind of nice. So I kind of like that aspect of it.
What if we did like a before after little celebration, like
Mhm.
like instead of like have like where we could either start there and like have snacks and hand out a little map or something, and we all go then start like, so we kind of start the ceremony there and then everyone leaves from there to find the homes, or we go to the homes first and then have a little after party celebration at the museum. Because it was, I think, one of the homes, well, I guess two of the homes on the last one had, they invited us in and everything. And it is nice, like just the little, just being able to talk and kind of hang out a little bit afterwards. And that might draw a few more people as well. I don't know. That could be like a hybrid idea, but I don't know. I think I agree with just the at the house. It's just special. Like it's just, yeah.
Yeah, I shared the fact that we go to the houses to landmark somebody I know who had their house landmarked in another community
Oh,
in the country, and they were like, "Really? Like we would have loved that. We didn't do that." He's like, "They just send
right,
you a plaque in the mail," and like, so they,
right.
it's really special to
Mm-hmm.
mark it some way in person. These are both in
Mm-hmm.
person ceremonies we're talking about.
Right.
Um, it is a little more convenient for the homeowners when it's at their house. So I worry a little bit that we wouldn't perhaps get as much participation
Mm-hmm.
at the
Yeah.
museum, because I do know, I think all but one. There was one, I believe, homeowner last summer though who I think they weren't there perhaps or
They forgot.
forgot. Right. So
They were there, but like not expecting us.
right. Um,
But they still came.
yeah.
Uh,
Um,
because they had to, because we were at their house.
right. Standing outside with
If
large
we'd been at the
scissors.
museum, they
But
wouldn't have had to come.
yeah.
So yeah. Do you have an opinion about it, Gary?
Well, unfortunately, there are not such an overwhelming number of landmarks that we have to aggregate them at the museum. So it works to continue to have them at the individual houses, I think.
Yeah.
If we had a dozen in 1 month, maybe we'd want to do it at the museum, but
Hmm.
not seeing that happen yet.
Right. Yeah, and I guess on average, so we've had 3 since our last landmarking ceremony. Is that right? And so I guess like on average, we probably get maybe like I think 3 a quarter. I think that's about our average or less than that. I'm just wondering for like future spacing them out.
Probably a little less than that, a quarter, I'd say. Over the last few years, I was just looking at it. I think we peaked at about, there's a couple years where it was like 6 or 7 for the year. And so then
Okay.
that coincided why we had so many this last time, because we had
Mhm.
2019 and 2020 essentially,
That's-
right? So I think a little less, but yeah, I mean, certainly, obviously, we're going to get really, really popular, and everyone's going to want a landmark. So
Right.
something to keep in mind. But yes,
Right, sure, yeah. I was just thinking if we did one in May with 3, which is a good number, and then maybe like in September, do another one kind of before the weather starts turning again, but
Right.
like, would we have enough to like do it again, or would we just be back to our once a year landmarking ceremony, or I don't know.
I think time would tell with that one. If there
Right,
was sort of a
yeah,
rush of people landmarking in the
right,
late spring, summer,
yeah.
then we could certainly do another in the fall.
But I think May would be wise. Not only is it preservation month, but then also like by the time summer hits, like schedule, like kids are out of school and vacations are happening, and it's just harder to um be able to commit. So I think in May would just kind of be a good kind of right before summer starts. So and maybe just keep it at, I think I feel bad like the museum has a lovely space. So I think that maybe that's my only where I'm like, sorry, we're not trying to like not use your space. It's lovely. But yeah, I think just keep it at the houses for now, especially because there are only 3.
Right.
And let's just keep it with that. And if at any point our program gets so big or complicated or something where we want to have at the museum or have like a hybrid something or whatever, we can kind of explore that next time. So, does everyone agree with that, or?
Yeah.
Just
I
keep
do.
it?
Yeah.
Do you feel like May is doable, Kim?
I do, yeah. The plaques are being made, so I think we're in good shape.
Okay.
So certainly I can, as we get closer and I have a better idea when the plaques are probably shipping, I think
Okay.
we can kind of nail down and do a doodle and nail down a date. But yeah, totally, I
Okay.
do think May is doable.
Okay, that's great.
For the commission, would you like me to see if we want to do like a post-event thing at the museum, or let this year just run with the being at the houses and then see if we wanted to do something, additive next year? I just wanted to see where maybe we landed on that. Happy to do either way,
Right.
but I don't know what the group thinks.
And I'm happy either way. I'd
say maybe just the houses
Okay,
for the second year.
just keep it simple.
Yeah.
great. All
That's
right.
good.
Well, then that's all I have for staff updates. Thank you all. Thank you
Yeah,
all very much.
That was a lot of work.
Yeah. Thank you, Kim.
Well, Kim, I did notice that you added into the updates, which properties had actually gone through the landmark process. And I appreciate that, because that's hard to glean sometimes without going to the city council resolutions and trying to figure out what actually got approved. So I appreciate you putting that in there. I think that's pretty important. And there was something else that was added like that. Oh, you brought up the notion of having the hybrid meetings that I'd mentioned in a note that might be helpful. So it sounds like you're pursuing that. So thanks.
Yeah, that's actually good. That's a good staff update too. So I had emailed this out, but just to confirm with the group here, so we are going back to in-person starting in April. That's a citywide initiative. At first, it was undecided whether or not ourselves, staff and commissioners could be hybrid, but the answer is that they can. So not only will meetings be hybrid in terms of hopefully allowing for folks, viewers, attendees to view it hybrid, not just in person, but online, but also we've gotten word that as needed commissioners could. Staff likely still has to be in person, I'm unsure. So I don't have all the updates or all the information, but by the time we meet on April, I will. We're having the city clerk Meredith Muth is having folks who would run commissions, so staff liaisons like me, in for a sort of learning session about what that will look like more clearly. I think this Friday it is. So I'll have a better understanding of what that looks like. So as I know more, I'll definitely let you guys know, but for sure moving forward in person, and then some options to potentially be hybrid as needed. So I'll let you guys know. Thanks for
Great.
bringing that up. I had forgotten about that, Commissioner Dunlap.
No, I think that's a good thing. Yeah.
Right. I appreciate that too. I think I'm excited to go in person and kind of move to this next step with HPC. But I know, especially in summer, like my family will be traveling and there was one I'd be missing, but it's great to know I can potentially still be there via Zoom.
For sure. All right. So our last is updates from commission members. Any last minute? Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Gary. I feel like that was a good commission update as far as being able to be virtual still. All right, and our last item is to adjourn. So make a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
I'd second that.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thanks for the good discussion this evening. I feel like we were productive even though we didn't have a lot on our agenda. So that was good to have that little brainstorming time. All right, well, have a good rest of your
Thank you.
evening.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good
Bye.
night.
Night.